Imagine by Bernard King and Nicholas Lumarine. All is revealed. We must change the writing credit from Nicholas to Jemma Lumarine. But Jemma is not finished with Jerome, and Jerome is certainly not finished with Jemma. Listen as sparks fly and love dies in the next episode of Imagine by Bernard King and Jemma Lumarine. Her smile was 50 miles wide. Now, isn't that funny? Everything was crumbling. His hopes, his future, his love for Jemma. As each pillar of his being collapsed, the dam, holding back his anger, cracked. He sat there dumbstruck. Each wave of emotion hit him. Rock-hard emotion, emotion that wounded, shock, disbelief, then a consuming paralysis. She took the champagne from the bucket and refilled her empty glass. You were perfect, Jerome, and behaved exactly as I had planned. Her champagne glass was lifted at him in salute. Come on, Jerome, you haven't touched your drink. His eyes travelled up the stem of the flute, between the open top of her gown, up to her grinning face. Her casual questions had sucked him dry of information, giving her the building blocks to build her fortress around him. 5 years. Yes, it was 5 years ago another woman had taken him down. Jennifer, the dead Jennifer. Jerome, don't be a misery. It's time to celebrate. I have my problem husband dead, 3/4 of a terrific novel, and you, a slave for life. He could not speak. Anger throttled his words. You must admit, meeting me has been quite an experience. You wrote everything. You lied, you cheated. Everything was untrue. His words were gouging into him. And I had you believing in the supernatural. She was mocking him. You honestly thought you were changing into Nicholas. Now that really gave me a double dose of material. The room turned red. The glass table shattered with his kick. Champagne, frothing madly in the crash, bubbled a cascade of foam over the carpet. She tried to stop him as he tanked out. His sweeping arm threw her back over a chair. He blundered for the door, almost wrenching the knob off as he hauled it open. Jerome, don't be angry. The champagne from her glass had smacked down near her naked front. I've done so much for you. Fury had made him deaf and dumb. The door smashed back against the stop. I even had your Jennifer run over. Her shouting was behind him now as he stamped along the hall. You didn't stand a chance. I'm a wonderful author and a fantastic actress. I went to RADA, you know. Her shouts crashed out as he turned down the staircase, lost in the deep pile and soft furnishings of the hall. He did not see the porter touch his cap or open the street door as he turned right into the square. Why he turned right he did not know. He could have turned left. It would not have made any difference to a man who had no idea where he was going. Women did these sort of things to men. The empty whiskey bottle lay sideways on the coffee table. His wife had used him and then left him when he was empty. He and the bottle were good company. He was still wearing the clothes he had worn for the dinner with Jemma 3 evenings ago. The Jemma that had used him to kill her husband and harvest material for her latest book. His hands were dirty and felt greasy. She had laughed at him. She had been laughing at him for 6 months. His foot kicked another bottle, another empty bottle, one that had been full of vodka. The scenes and incidents scrabbled like ants inside his head, each hurting, wounding, and damaging. He ached everywhere with fury. Hate for Jemma and hate for himself took turns to twist the dagger of rage to the hilt. The anticipation crap when they had first met, an experiment to see how he took orders and how far he could be pushed. He had spotted her stalker, so she had been a little bit more clever, insisting he kept his telephone on all the time. Perfect. It had acted like a criminal's tag, advertising wherever he went. It was only now, as the alcoholic fumes weakened, and allowed a semblance of constructive thought that the answer to half a year of deceit, offered itself. He would kill the bitch. He would kill her next time he met her, and she would not be able to stop him. She was so good at plotting and constructing a story, he wondered if this twist in the tale had occurred to her. Imagine is what she had written with her pen name, but now they were in real time, real life. He would get another grenade from Charlie and hand it to her the way he had handed one to her husband. The police were baffled by Nicholas's murder, as he guessed they would be. The grenade had destroyed all evidence and clues in the quarry. The case had smacked against the wall of evaporated evidence. Grenades were good. He would kill Jemma with a grenade. Of course, that's how she found Charlie. The realization arrived as he waited for his arms dealer to answer the phone. If his phone showed his position, it would tell also who he was contacting. He cut the call. She was probably still spying on him. What happened to the last one I sold you? Charlie's question dripped suspicion. I part-exchanged it for another pistol. Jerome screwed up his nose. The old telephone box he was calling from stank of urine. No, you fucking didn't. Yes, I did, Charlie. It was the one that killed that guy in the quarry. Charlie was adamant. What guy? What quarry? Jerome, there aren't that many grenades around, and there's one less now. I need one for another deal. I ain't got one. £200. Fuck. Bearing in mind I only paid 60 for the last one. Fuck. Jerome put down the phone. He could almost hear Charlie's mind rattling through his contacts in his scamper to secure an easy profit. It took a week for the sharp edge of fury to blunt. The four corners of his being that had been filled with hate slowly emptied, refilling with the dispassionate trust of anything female. For fuck's sake, Jerome, I'm doing my best. Stop fucking phoning me. Charlie, it's never taken you this long to get me what I wanted. Grenades are difficult, Charlie moaned. Get one. Jerome threw the phone down. He was ready. Jemma would soon come to the big full stop. He knew exactly how he would end her story. At some moment, she would contact him. She had called him her slave, and it was logic she would use her slave. Once he knew her intentions, he could act. But first, he had to be prepared. Failing to prepare was preparing to fail. He had to have the grenade. It arrived 2 days later, 3 feet above his doorstep in Charlie's outstretched hand. 250 quid. You said 200. Jerome took the weapon. No, you said 200. I'm saying 250. Jerome passed over the cash. He was in no mood to argue with Charlie. Since that murder in the quarry, all the hitmen are buying them. The police are going mental. They don't leave no evidence. The grenade matched the last one, the same age with a 6-second fuse. Anything else? Charlie never stopped selling. Jerome shook his head and closed the door. He sat on the stairs, tapping the grenade thoughtfully on one of his knees, wondering what damage Charlie could do to him. 2 murders with a grenade would have his gun runner thinking. He had not been connected to Nicholas, or rather Walter, but he had been seen with Jemma. They were 2 angles that had not been around when he disposed of Walter. Charlie's business and Charlie did not figure in the UK population. That was sufficient reason to forget angle number 1. The hotels he had stayed with Jemma, the restaurants and the business centre had all been booked in his name. Jemma, playing her game of the damaged wife, had covered her tracks before each meeting. So unless he was very unlucky, or one of life's amazing coincidences thumped itself down before him, he was as anonymous as ever. He decided not to keep the grenade in his armoury. He would keep it with him wherever he went. Jemma was quite likely to contact him when he left work and demand an immediate meeting, which could be an opportunity to use the weapon. The vodka from the fridge was ice cold and slipped down easily, freeing his mind a little from the tourniquet of bitterness that had tightened around him since Gemma's revelation. He had to admire the way she worked. It had been quite easy to deceive him over her husband. He was a non-entity, a drunken bum with more non than entity. Now Nicholas Lumarine was dead. He would pay no tax or have any of the problems of citizenship. He would also... The pause was necessary for Jerome's alcohol-late brain to grapple with a huge thought that had just swam through his alcohol-addled thinking to the few threads of his brain that could still react. Blinking away confusion, he sat slowly upright. For the first time for days, he smiled. His theory had developed halfway down the bottle of vodka, necessitating eyes squeezed shut with concentration, frightened his idea might melt away into the depths of his deadened brain. Jemma had made a God Almighty mistake. He took a celebratory swig from the bottle, smiled again, and then took another. The murder had generated huge publicity. The funeral date, Jerome noted, had not been announced. Finding the remains of Nicholas would obviously take time. Apparently, Nicholas's books could not be printed quickly enough. The author was selling more books dead than when he had been alive. Another swig, and he emptied the bottle, throwing it into a corner with a huge chuckle. All that work Jemma had done, what a waste. Imagine would never now be finished. Her book was dead. Jemma had killed off the writer. This was terrific. Jemma, the international best-selling liar, had actually made a boob. He opened the fridge and bent to take out another bottle of Victory vodka. Slowly he straightened, staring at the bottle with a boozy gaze. More information was staggering in from his newly released imagination. It was true, imagination would never be finished, but as well for a totally different reason, because now he was going to kill off the second writer. He stared at the yellow glow from the fridge. There was something he should do. Yes, he should close the door. Now the yellow light was level with his face, and there was nothing he could do about it. The alcohol had bubbled up, above his eyes to his brain. Already on his knees, he slipped slowly sideways and fell asleep as the fridge caressed his brow with cold water from the melting ice. The shaft of sunlight hitting his kitchen tabletop also hit his opening eyes. A mistake. The jangle of pain suggested strongly he should close them again, prompted by the glare increasing the intensity of the thumping inside his skull. His turn on his side was accompanied by a squelch. Gently pressing his hands on his trousers informed him he was soaked. Movement was impossible. The slightest gesture turned his brain into a hooligan that tried to scrabble out via the top of his head. He needed water. His mouth felt as if 20 fish had died in it a week ago. The slow rise up and the stagger to the tap was as it should be after drinking almost 2 bottles of vodka. Sheer agony. The water got rid of the fish, establishing he was not dying, and helped focus his eyes on the kitchen clock. It was 6 o'clock. He had to be at work in 2 hours. Levering himself gently out of the kitchen, he made his way towards the bathroom. The hot jets in the shower moved him a little nearer humanity. Breakfast could not be faced, but each cup of coffee helped raise the blood level in his alcohol-soaked body. At the bus stop, it began to feel as though he might just get through the day. A number 65 London bus is tall and rectangular. It is bright red. It has adverts on the front and the sides. It carries passengers and a driver. Nowhere or near the bus is there anything that looks remotely like a hand grenade. So why did Jerome suddenly think hand grenade? Jerome did not know. All he knew was he did not have his, and he had no idea where he had left it. The bus growled to a stop, but Jerome was already on his way back to his house. Leaving a grenade lying around was lazy, dangerous, and stupid. Alarm bells rang. The grenade had vanished. He had searched the house vertically and horizontally. Where the hell was it? It could not have been stolen. No one had been in the house. Arms burrowing inside sofa innards, ears peering under furniture, and hands moving dust on top of wardrobes and cupboards increased his anxiety. In his drunken state, he had hidden the grenade from everyone. including himself. That evening, after spending a day on automatic at work, he collected all the alcoholic drinks in the house and put them in a suitcase. He would not drink again. Booze, bread, boobs. He needed clarity, caution, and calm. He would take the case to work tomorrow and give it to the first beggar he met. It would make the beggar's day, although he probably would never remember it. But he'd forgotten the fridge. There might be more beer and vodka chilling inside. The light came on as the door opened. There was more beer and more vodka and something even more chilling. His hand grenade rolled gently across the shelf and threw itself on the floor. Relieved, he picked it up. It would stay with him now until it was time to use it. It was strange. It did not smell as he remembered it. Was it his imagination, or did this grenade feel lighter than the last one? He sniffed the weapon. Weapons have a smell to them. Even matching pistols have their own smell. The grenade smelt dead. It smelt of nothing. It was obvious he was getting twitchy. The grenade was old. The explosive fuse and oiled mechanisms would have given up their scent years ago. He must stop digging out worries. The weapon made an unacceptable bulge in his suit pocket, so a supermarket plastic bag allowed the weapon to bang against his leg as he made his way to work. He would make a sprog for the grenade in the evening and would wear it around his waist. When Jemma called, he would be tooled up and ready. But she did not call. She went one better. She appeared. In front of him, top left on the wall he faced. The hamburger haunt, his launch provider on Tuesdays and Thursdays, had a TV screen on each wall, and Jemma was reading from notes on all four of them. Her voice snapped his attention from his lunch to the screen. Jerome realized she was in a church. Of course she would be. Nicholas, what was left of him, was being cremated today. The clip was short, but what she was reading caused a stir in the congregation. Jerome blinked. A close-up of the nameplate on the coffin made his eyes pop. No, she wouldn't. But she had. The camera lingered on Walter Lumarine, deeply engraved in the silver plate. Walter was being exposed to the world. Could Jemma be confessing? No, she wouldn't. But she had. The glances being exchanged in the pews were mild compared to Jerome's open-mouthed gape at the screen. The cover of one of Nicholas's books appeared. A red line traced through Nicholas, and Jemma appeared above it. The piece cut to the news presenter, who excitedly explaining to the world Jemma's astonishing reveal. Astonishing to everyone except him. Jerome bitterly threw his lunch in the bin. There was no stopping the woman. She had cameras and an audience, and boy, had she used them. Now, her books would probably sell even more, with all the fans eagerly awaiting her latest, which of course would be Imagine. They would have a long wait. Jerome picked up his shopping bag. The grenade clipped his ankle, but he barely felt it. If he had anything to do with it, he would cut their anticipation as short as he possibly could. He was able to fill in the details from the news that evening. Jemma had been surrounded by cameras all day, giving tearful interviews and relating how kind her husband had been to go along with her idea of using his name, the vehicle for her deception, which was the violent adventures in her books, necessitating a man's name to carry the sales. Jerome watched, his lip curling with annoyance as Jemma manipulated interviewer after interviewer. Such a sweet man, a wonderful husband, the rock of my life. Jerome switched the TV off, disgusted by the sugar-coated lies of the grieving widow. He watched the bestsellers list for the next 2 days. Nicholas Lumarine's book sales were almost going into orbit, readers fascinated by the woman who wrote Blood and Thunder and Sex. Pre-orders for Imagine were filling the pockets of her publisher, with the movie companies outbidding each other for the film rights. Few of Lumarine's readers seemed upset by Jemma's deceit, and the publicity had attracted a huge new wedge of readers. Jemma was hot. Jemma was everywhere, and judging by the number of her books being held up in front of her face in the bus, Jemma was making another fortune. Again, she did not phone or email. Her arrival was physical. He was ambushed. A hand tunneled between his arm and his body. He had not seen her. She must have been waiting behind one of the ornamental trees that tried to cheer up the entrance to his bank as he approached. "So where are you going to take me?" Jerome froze. He knew that line. Jemma's husband had supposedly written it on page 10 of Imagine. She looked good. She had been to the sunshine since he last saw her, her tan complementing her golden hair, giving her an even more well-heeled presence. "Correction. Where am I going to take you?" "I'm going to work." He looked ahead, ignoring the little tug she gave him. "Oh, no, you're not. We're going to have a little chat." His arm was cuddled closer to the side of her breast. "I have a job for you." This time there was no rolls. They boarded a number 65 bus. Jerome assumed they would be going to his house for a chat. "You're not very talkative, darling." She let her handbag fall against his leg. Jerome tightened. They were playing a repeat. He lifted the bag and dumped it back into her lap. "Jerome, don't be such a grump." She moved closer, stroking the inside of his thigh. "Be sensible. Accept the situation." Her hand moved higher. "I have recordings of you admitting killing Walter, even explaining how you were going to do it." Her fingers were fiddling with the zip. He placed his hand on top of hers, stopping movement. "They're no good to you. Your voice is on them," he snapped. For the first time, he looked her in the eye. It was bright with amusement. She shook her head. "Edit it out, sweetie." She pulled down his zip. "You have thought of everything." She nodded. "Every part of you belongs to me, Jerome." Her hands went inside his trousers and gripped. "Even this." He snatched her hand away and stood up. They were approaching his stop. The seat bounced as his bottom thumped back down, her hand tugging the back of his jacket. With another sweet smile, she informed him they were going to Richmond Park for their chat, out in an open space, away from being overheard or recorded. What she had to say to him was for their ears only. She demanded his telephone, and on entering the park, she took out a small silver box with a short aerial. A red light illuminated as she turned it on. It blocked telephones and just about everything else, she explained. She bought it on the internet to stop people using their telephones when she was in a restaurant or in a train. They walked straight out into the middle of the park, leaving the joggers and the cyclists to torture themselves in public on the outer roads and paths. She chose a bench that backed onto a low stone wall, a boundary between the open space in front of them and a wooded spinney behind. "When I was a young and hopeful student actress at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art," she patted the bench beside her, a silent order for him to sit, "I fell in love with a handsome young man." Her eyes became distant as she travelled back to the easy, uncomplicated days before life's tentacles enmeshed her. Neither she nor the handsome young man were good enough to become professional performers. After 2 years of rejections, Jemma started writing, and the young man became a publisher. He signed me up on my 25th birthday. She took a brown envelope out of her bag and placed it on the seat between them. "That is the contract I signed." His glance of disinterest at the envelope was not what she wanted. "Open it," she snapped. The document he slipped out was quite thick, much too thick to read quickly. "It cannot be broken. I have had teams of lawyers trying for years." Jerome was not listening. A scene was falling into place. "And the bastard has been snatching 30% of my money ever since." Jemma was still in her dreams and could not notice his quick searching glance. "It has got to stop, and Jerome, my sweetie, you're going to stop it." The pause cued him for an answer. His memory replayed her last words. "I'm not a lawyer," he snapped. "You don't have to be. I just want him killed." So that was it. Her plotting had gone further than her husband. Now her publisher was next in the queue. Who would be next? her accountant, her tax inspector. Jerome is trapped. He is Jemma's slave and hitman. But for how long? Listen to the next episode of Imagine.